This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories. Divisions deepen over Ebola in the DRC. Arrests, a murder and threats of strike action. We'll explain the latest twists and turns. Could eating less meat help save the planet? A new report says just that. We'll look at the countries most likely to be affected. It's described as one of the world's biggest health threats. So how is vaccine hesitancy being tackled on the continent? Also in the program, play on, play on. 85-year-old Manu Dibango explains what's motivated his extraordinary career and why there is no sign of him slowing down just yet.
I've been playing music for 60 years and huge bridges have been built between the West and Africa. I consider myself lucky anyway to be able to build bridges between the two.
And in sport, the transfer window has closed for English clubs, and the Ivorian international Wilfried Zaha says stays at Crystal Palace against his will. Well, thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. 3 doctors in the Democratic Republic of Congo have been arrested as part of an ongoing investigation into the murder of a World Health Organization medic. Dr. Richard Mozoko was killed back in April. It happened during an attack in Butembo University Hospital in eastern DRC. The arrests of the doctors have stirred tensions with health workers in Butembo, threatening to go on strike if their colleagues are not released on bail. More than 1,800 people have died from the Ebola virus in the past year. So let's bring in the BBC's Gaius Kowene, who is in the capital, Kinshasa. Gaius, what's the latest on this development?
Well, the latest is that right now there is a delegation from the capital of North Kivu, Goma, that is going back to Butembo to hold talks between government representatives as well as representatives of the Order of Doctors to discuss and see possibilities of getting those medics released on bail. Because the Order of Doctors actually gave an ultimatum that expires today. But the government asked for more time and to prolong negotiation in order to avoid consequences that such a strike might have. Now, another problem is that apart from doctors, there are also nurses who said they will be joining doctors just in case they went to strike. And why? That is because these nurses are the ones who are at the forefront of the fight against Ebola. And if they don't have the support of the doctors, it will be very hard for them to fight the virus. They will be more exposed. So they say they don't want to take the risk. That's why they will be joining their colleagues if the 3 doctors who were arrested are not released on bail.
So there might be quite a huge impact there. But there's been a huge push, really, to help educate people on the ground on the suspicions they've had over vaccines. You are in Goma recently, Gaius. What feeling did you get on the ground about those campaigns?
Well, the feeling with many people in eastern DRC, be it in Goma, in Butembo, or in Beni, is that right now there is some sort of awakening that's going on where people are starting now to realize and understand that Ebola is real because they have seen many people dying. They have seen their neighbors passing away, but they have also seen others coming alive out of Ebola treatment centers. So slowly efforts are being put into debunking all the myths surrounding the Ebola virus.
All right, Gaius Kowene reporting for us there from Kinshasa. Thank you. Now, a major report on climate change is warning that humanity faces increasingly painful trade-offs between food security and rising temperatures unless it stops unsustainable farming and deforestation. Now, while many sub-Saharan Africans still eat almost no meat, dairy or fish, that could change. That UN report predicts that a higher population in sub-Saharan Africa will result in a significant increase in meat and dairy consumption due to development and stronger purchasing power. By 2050, Almost 2 out of 5 livestock animals in the world will be from Africa, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization. The number of chickens in Africa is set to quadruple to 7 billion by 2050. Meat imports are predicted to grow by 3% per year, with Africa importing more meat than China. That's according to the OECD. Now, such big changes in the amount of meat production and consumption in Africa will put a huge strain on the environment. Well, let's bring in Scott Newman. He's a senior animal health and production officer for the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization. He joins us from Accra, Ghana. Thanks for taking time to talk to us. There's been a huge stress on protecting natural forests and also lessening the eating of meat. Help us understand how that has an impact on climate change.
Yeah, well, we understand very well that a lot of the challenges that the agriculture sector has faced in the past has been really focused on trying to produce as many animals and as much food product as possible without taking into concern and thinking about the repercussions of those production methods. And we recognize now, after working on lowering our impact on biodiversity, maintaining sustainable farming practices, and improving the way that farmers raise animals, whether it be through improved feed or waste management or other techniques that are promoting integrated farming systems, we realize that we can actually produce a lot more animal and meat product without having the same detrimental effects on the environment. And so this is where we see the transformation of the agriculture sector really as an opportunity to improve farming systems, an opportunity to actually do more sustainable practices that safeguards biodiversity and natural resources.
We're looking at a continent that is quite diverse, where people who basically solely, some rely on animals for daily life, for buying land, for marriage, a transaction, so to speak. How do you begin to change that mindset at all?
Yeah, it's a really a very big challenge for everybody, and it's not just the agriculture sector. In fact, you've highlighted the need for really what we refer to as a One Health approach, an approach that integrates different sectors of expertise to really solve a large-scale dynamic problem. And we know that activities such as improving governance, perhaps forest governance, improving land use planning, bringing together people that are sustainably managing their own system. So not necessarily having outsiders coming in and support, but teaching them the value of sustainable management of the resources that they live on day to day, and that will sustain them and generations to come. This is almost an approach that needs to be done with collaboration of anthropologists and other people who are social scientists. So we really see a dynamic effort from multiple sectors needing to come together to succeed here.
What kind of timeframes are you looking at? Because globally we are looking at billions and really millions of farmers.
Yeah. I mean, we recognize that, every step at this point forward will and can make a significant difference. And so we know the projections that we've worked on in FAO's Future of Livestock reports really focuses on the progression of the livestock sector up and through 2050. And this has really highlighted the need for us to really take this on very soon, because we recognize there are issues of emerging infectious diseases, possibly antimicrobial resistance, and then as you've already highlighted, a lot of the natural resource depletion and climate change related issues need to be addressed now. So we have been doing this work already. We are upscaling it. It is a priority area of work for the organization. And we have a large team of people, technical experts, both at regional and at national level, that are supporting governments to move forward with a lot of this work. And the actual work that was done in Burkina Faso, Ethiopia, Kenya, Nigeria, and Uganda, this was really work done with the government, with other development partners like USAID. And so in that context, the policy gaps and the policy needs associated with the projections of the livestock development sector in cattle and poultry areas has already been discussed. So governments are starting to become very aware of what is needed. We're expanding that work even into regional economic communities and even working to some extent with the African Union on looking at it at a continental level.
All right. Scott Newman, thank you very much indeed for taking time to talk to us on Focus on Africa. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Let's take a look at the real-life impacts of climate change. The United Nations says that in Somalia as a whole, more than 2 million people will be short of food by next month because of the drought there. Now, in the self-declared Republic of Somaliland, around 600,000 people have been forced off their lands by the drought. Bidan Dahir has more.
These children don't go to school. Education is not priority. The only thing their parents worry about is how to feed their young ones. These families are poor now, but they have seen better days. Before the rains failed, this mother had 500 goats. Nearly all of them died in the drought. Now she is struggling to survive.
We were many families. We kept goats and camels and had plenty of milk and ghee. Suddenly everything went upside down. We lost the majority of our people. Many died, and the rest live here in plastic huts, as you can see.
Any job for these people are in the city, a great distance away. So for these families now living on the breadline, the only way to make living is by collecting and selling stones. It's hard work, but this mother has no other options.
I don't have anyone to help me collect stones. No one gives me money, and I have no stake in this land. I am forced to collect stones rather than beg.
Now developers want to build on this land and are asking these families to move out. They are wondering just where can they go when there's nowhere else. Bidan Dahir, BBC News.
Now, 3 policemen and a civilian have been killed by soldiers in Taraba State in northeast Nigeria. The incident happened as the police were bringing a suspected kidnapper into custody. The kidnapper was allegedly involved in the abduction of an oil mogul in which a $200,000 ransom was paid. For more on this story, let's speak to Chris Ewoko, who joins us from Abuja. Chris, what happened?
Well, what we're told by the Nigeria police headquarters, that is the spokesman for the Nigerian police, Frank Mba, he claimed that the police elite squad was sent from Abuja to Taraba State to investigate and arrest the notorious kidnapper. And then arriving there, a suspected kidnapper was arrested, and they were taking him to a regional police headquarters. There, when they suddenly come under attack, soldiers on roadblocks fired at them, and a lot of them were injured. 3 police officers and a civilian was killed. And in the course of the chaos and gunfire, the suspected kidnapper was released. The police claimed that the suspected kidnapper had been on their wanted list for his complicity in the case of a series of high-profile kidnapping, among which was the kidnapping of an oil dealer who paid over $200,000 to secure his release.
Right. So what is the military saying about this? Why did they shoot at, policemen?
Well, in a counter statement by the Nigerian army, that's the army spokesman, Colonel Sajur Musa, he said that it was an unfortunate and avoidable error, and that the policemen did not identify themselves. The vehicle they were traveling in failed to stop at a series of checkpoints, and they had no option than to open fire. And it was after the shooting, one of those that was injured explained to them that they were policemen on special duty. And it was because of lack of coordination, because they were not aware that the police was actually on a mission or a special operation in that area.
All right, Chris Owoko for us there in Abuja. Thank you. This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Still to come, Nigerian international Alex Iwobi is on his way to Everton on a last-minute deal for the Toffees. I'm Sophie Ikenye, and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top stories on this program: 3 Congolese doctors have been arrested in the Democratic Republic of Congo over the killing of a World Health Organization medic, Richard Mauzoko. Doctors have threatened to strike if their colleagues are not released. A major report on climate change warns humanity faces increasingly painful trade-offs between food security and rising temperatures unless it stops unsustainable farming, reduces carbon emissions, and reduces deforestation. Now, in Nigeria, babies should have 6 vaccinations in the first year of their life. But as in many other parts of the world, faith in vaccinations has been undermined by some parents and pressure groups that claim the vaccines themselves are the danger. Now, the World Health Organization says vaccine hesitancy is now one of the top 10 threats to global health. The BBC's Charles Mugbolu reports from northeastern Nigeria.
Yola, Adamawa State, in the far northeast corner of Nigeria, health workers report rising numbers of anti-vaxxers, that is, people who refuse vaccinations. Adamu Bauro is one of them.
I didn't get the vaccine and I'm still healthy. I'm 52 years old. Secondly, my kids, I deny them from getting the vaccines also, and they are still healthy.
Bilikisu Umar has a different opinion on immunization, as she insists a grandchild will still be alive if he had been vaccinated. He died 2 years ago from polio.
Alimu was sick. He was vomiting and had diarrhea. All the local herbs used were having no effect. He was later taken to a hospital, and there they learned he had polio. I tried several times to get him vaccinated, but a family member refused. I used traditional rulers and other prominent men in the area to plead with the family member, but they still refused. They refused because they believed that children who get vaccinated become infertile in the future.
Because of vaccinations, the World Health Organization says more than 2 to 3 million deaths are prevented every year. It's one of the most cost-effective ways of preventing diseases. But now, faith in vaccines is under threat. According to WHO, vaccine hesitancy is a current global problem. Some examples are the reluctance to accept the measles vaccine in parts of Europe, the human papillomavirus vaccine in Japan and India, and the polio vaccine in parts of Pakistan. But getting people to vaccinate their children is not easy. Loretta Anaza organizes and trains volunteer health workers in the city. She says sometimes their lives could be in danger.
There are issues where these community workers that are supposed to go for immunization, when they enter the community, they chase them out. Some of these sub-communities, you see them, they don't even want to see them. They don't allow them to come in. You know, we have issues like that. And what do we tell them? You run for your life now, is it not?
This is a Misa family. The couple's 3rd child lives with the side effects of polio. His father, Adamu Misa, says he regrets not vaccinating his child.
I've seen it myself. I have a practical knowledge on it now. I've seen it on my child. So anybody who supports that, I can deny him. If he says something against the vaccination, I will show him practical example with my child.
Nigerians have combated misinformation, suspicion of vaccine science, and religion-based boycotts. In the case of polio, they are close to eradicating this virus completely, the last African country still to achieve this. But there is still a lot of work for government to do when it comes to anti-vaxxers, and make sure all other preventable diseases are tackled. Charles Mbulu, BBC News, Nigeria.
You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. Let's find out what's happening in the world of sports. Pierre-Antoine.
Thank you, Sophie. We start with football and the transfer. As an hour ago, the window closed for English Premier League clubs. One name was all around the papers today. It's Wilfried Zaha, But despite trying to force a move away from Crystal Palace, well, the Ivorian international will stay at Selhurst Park. Zaha handed a transfer request but will not join Everton because of disagreements over the transfer fee. Zaha did not train today with Palace, so we will now see how he recovers mentally from these disappointments. But there was no time to spare for the Toffees, who needed a winger, so they turned to Alex Iwobi for a last-minute deal. Arsenal and Everton have agreed on the $40 million fee for the Nigerian international. And Watford has their winger. Ismaila Sarr joined from French Ligue 1 side Rennes. The talented 21-year-old signed for 5 years and a club record fee of $35 million. Now let's turn to Morocco. A shock penalty shootout defeat against Benin in the last 16 of the African Cup of Nations led to the departure of coach Hervé Renard, and the nation therefore needed to start fresh. To do so, they appointed Ocean Roberts as technical director, and the BBC's Owen Lear sat down with him.
Well, first of all, I think, it's a footballing nation. I think quite often now we hear people saying, and certainly I've said it for many years, where children don't play on the streets anymore. Well, they do in Morocco. So the type of player excites me. They've not done particularly well over the last 12 or 18 months. So, the president feels he wants to start afresh, blank sheet of paper, and given me the opportunity to go and build something.
Finally, a word of cricket as Hashim Amla deciding to end his international career. Amla, one of the game's all-time great, played 349 matches for the Proteas across all 3 formats. The 36-year-old had a long international career of 15 years in which he became the country's second highest test run scorer behind Jack Callis. Amla will still be available to play domestic cricket in his homeland. That's all for the sport today. Sophie, back to you.
Thank you, Pierre. Thank you. Now, 60 years on stage and still going strong at 85 years old, Cameroon's Manu Dibango has been entertaining audiences all around the world. But when he finally took a break and sat down at the Massiac Jazz Festival in France, he explained why his music appeals to so many people.
Je suis simplement un gars qui est musicien.
I'm just a guy who's a musician. I'm not a European or African musician. I'm a musician of African origin living in Europe. We have to take this into account because many people fantasized about so-called African music.
Nous sommes des
We are bridge builders through our stories. I've been playing music for 60 years and huge bridges have been built between the West and Africa. I consider myself lucky anyway to be able to build bridges between the two.
C'est une chance. Ma famille est protestante.
My family is Protestant. My paternal uncle played the reed organ during the time of the Germans. My mother was the choir director. I'm a child raised among hallelujahs. That doesn't mean I'm not African, Cameroonian. It means I have the harmony of Bach and Handel in my ear with Cameroonian lyrics.
Du saxo, ça c'est plutôt noir américain. Hein?
If you play saxophone, oops, that's pretty black American. You're not so African in some people's minds anymore. So if you also play the piano, you're in trouble. And yet there are pianos in every hotel in Africa. In all orchestras there are guitars, things like that. So it's fantasies that people attach to you a little. And maybe part of your life is chasing fantasies.
Manu Dibango there. Don't forget you can get in touch with me and the rest of the team on social media. I'm at Sikenye. That's all from Focus on Africa. Thanks for your company.